I wanted to achieve was, huge success in my career, but never at the sacrifice of my family and what really matters to me. But it made me realize by being at home, spending every morning lunch with my first child, that I could never go back. And that's ultimately what I do now as a consultant, as a coach, as an advisor, is help people win in the world of enterprise sales and large corporate organizations without that sacrifice that everyone thinks is just a given, that you do have to give those things up or certainly dial down the focus. And that is the premise of the book. The first thing that I ever noticed when I joined Amazon was the talent bar, the level of quality. Every room on day one, you feel like you are the dumbest person in the room. You always felt like you were nowhere near the smartest person in the room. But that's what made it such a great place. That's what stretched me and others and helps you to grow and learn, because you're constantly being leveled up by those people around you. One of the Amazon leadership principles is learn and be curious. And equally, another one is hire and develop the best. I never won a strategic deal without a team. And I would never, ever have stood up on stage and said, hey, I won this deal. It was always team effort. People thought I was crazy when I said I'm leaving the role, I'm leaving the industry, I'm leaving Amazon to start my own business as a solo advisor, consultant, coach. I think that was probably the biggest wow/scary realization, that no longer can you rely on the credibility you get from the organization. This is just you. And when you combine all those three things in terms of your value, creating value for customers and creating value for the organization, that's when your career soars.
Welcome to Prospecting Pros. And today on our show, we have Norris. Welcome.
Afternoon. Thank you for having me, John.
So what I like to do is I like to start off every episode by having you introduce yourself, but also give a little bit of background of some of your past work experience and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent the best part of 15 years in the enterprise B2B tech sales industry with two organizations, and most recently at AWS, which is part of the Amazon organization. I started my sales career through a graduate scheme, kind of went through that whole do every job in the business, learn all the different parts of the organization, and then a really scary set of assessments at the end to say, right, you're ready to go out into the world of sales, enterprise sales with some of the biggest companies in the UK. And it all grew from there, through selling into retail, into global healthcare and pharmaceuticals. Some pretty big deals there at both Computer Center and AWS. But I got to a point in my career where I was having success with customers, my brand was building, I was being promoted through the ranks of junior AM to senior AM to principal. But one of the things that I think makes my journey really, really unique is that when I first became a father, shortly afterwards, we went into lockdown, and family is everything for me. And what I wanted to achieve was, huge success in my career, but never at the sacrifice of my family and what really matters to me. And one of the things that I noticed in the industry, and it's probably still a big problem out there, is I could find the people that had the family and the personal stuff nailed, but they were never really getting to the heights that I wanted to get to. And the flip side, I could see the people that were winning the big deals, careers were moving rapidly, but then at what cost, at what sacrifice was that? So when I first became a father, and the uniqueness of that happening just before lockdown is, if COVID, which was a terrible thing, had never happened, I just would have done my 2 weeks paternity leave and then gone back to the day job of traveling, flights, all those kind of things. But it made me realize, by being at home, spending every morning lunch with my first child, that I could never go back. So I had to completely reinvent the way that I thought, the way that I operated with both customers and my internal organization and my teams, to be able to achieve in both areas of my life. And that's ultimately what I do now as a consultant, as a coach, as an advisor, is help people win in the world of enterprise sales in large corporate organizations without that sacrifice that everyone thinks is just a given, that you do have to give those things up or certainly dial down the focus. And that is the premise of the book, which I'm sure we will talk about at some point.
Okay, awesome. So I want to talk about Amazon for a little bit and your experience there, but then I also want to talk about the process of you actually starting your own company and transferring out of Amazon into your journey now of writing the book and then your own company. So let's focus on Amazon. Like, what was that experience like from the first time you were started working there, and then as you started working up the ranks, and then also selling enterprise deals? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Amazon was an incredible experience. One of the reasons that I joined AWS was I could see the trend. I could see the industry move into modern application development, rapidly building not just applications and capabilities in the cloud, but companies were being born as a result of the cloud. There would be no Airbnb. There would be none of these modern digital banks if it wasn't for the cloud. Even though I worked for an incredible organization, we were focused more on the infrastructure and the IT side of things. I really wanted to have real business impact. I wanted to, whatever I was selling, whatever I was building with customers, I wanted it to have that impact. The first thing that I ever noticed when I joined Amazon was the talent bar, the level of quality. Every room on day one, you feel like you are the dumbest person in the room.
And were you going in office, by the way?
Yes, when I joined.
Okay.
Yeah, so in London, I went for the infamous Loop in person in London. And so I joined in March 2018. So we were in the offices. I live up in the north of the UK, but it's not a huge commute to go down to London for 2 or 3 days. So we had a team, but AWS was growing rapidly. So they were moving offices, but we very much had that. Be present with customers, be present as a team. And there were some incredible events, but you were always filled with rooms full of incredibly smart people, whether they be salespeople, whether they be leaders, whether they be technical ICs or people leaders. But that never changed from the very beginning to the day I left. You always felt like you were nowhere near the smartest person in the room. But that's what made it such a great place. That's what stretched me and others and helps you to grow and learn, because you're constantly being leveled up by those people around you.
What would you say the training and support is internally at a company like that compared to maybe your typical startup? Are they really coaching you up and training you so you can grow and level up, essentially? Like, what is that like?
There's probably, between a startup and a huge startup like AWS, that was what was unique, is we were working in a massive organization of the Amazon business, but AWS in itself was only a few years old when I joined, but it just had this astronomical growth. But it had the beast that is Amazon, all the infrastructure, all the investment in learning, development, and people behind it. What I would say is the biggest challenge you had at Amazon from a coaching, learning, training perspective was there's so much out there, and it very much operates with a self-serve mentality. So just like the cloud, where people can go and self-serve building out cloud infrastructures by just having a credit card and logging on to the portal, learning, development, coaching, everything was like that at Amazon. The biggest challenge would be is, where do I focus my energy when it comes to learning and development? Because you could never keep up as an account exec. You could never keep up with the rapid innovation in terms of the new services, the new features that were constantly being launched. So did you try and keep up with all the tech, or did you focus on developing your sales skills? Did you focus on a particular industry maybe that you were selling into? So you very much had to operate as an owner and make wise decisions on what focus areas you had for your learning, how you learned, like what was the quickest way to get you to your goal, the goals that the company has for you, and really be a leader and go, okay, this is my plan and this is how I'm going to stick to it. But there's more resources than you could ever possibly want versus when you're working, and I've never worked for a startup, but I've worked with startups, I've worked with scale-ups. They don't have the mature learning and development org,
Yeah.
they potentially don't have.
They don't.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. My insights and my instincts are correct. People don't necessarily have the bandwidth and the flexibility to go, okay, we are going to invest. I'm going to invest half a day a week purely on learning and development. Slightly different for the commercial sales org, but the solutions architects or the sales engineers that people might place those individuals as, there was an expectation that they would spend at least one whole day of their week, or maybe they spread it across the whole week, on learning, leveling up, so that when they go in the room with the customer, they are absolute experts. They deeply understand their topic. They deeply understand how to get that customer from idea to actually building that and benefiting from that on AWS. So there was very much a huge learning culture. One of the Amazon leadership principles is learn and be curious. And equally, another one is hire and develop the best. So we don't just bring top talent in. It's incumbent on the leadership. It's incumbent on everyone to constantly be developing and raising that talent bar.
And what was it like for you as an AE or selling? Were you given inbound leads? Were you expected to do a certain amount of prospecting and hunting on your own? Like, what was that balance like?
So I worked on larger enterprise accounts, and AWS is a huge brand, right? So even if we were cold prospecting, even when we're running our prospecting days, any form of outreach, we had the benefit of everybody knows AWS.
Yeah, it's nice, huh?
And if they don't know AWS, then maybe we shouldn't be talking about them, because they are, talking to them. Maybe they're really behind the innovation and the development curve. But what I would say was our greatest challenge when in the early days of my tenure at AWS is there would be very forward-thinking organizations that maybe even had, you might remember it when every organization suddenly launched their digital business. And sometimes it was a completely separate entity, different team, maybe located, for example, in the UK, there would be northern headquartered organizations that would establish a digital business in London because they wanted that digital talent. They very much wanted to have that part of their business in the city. AWS was very, very strong in that digital space. So I spent a lot of time selling into retail, and pretty much every retailer started off its journey by either building or re-platforming its e-commerce platform on AWS. What was then really challenging, especially in the enterprise with these more established organizations, was breaking into like where their core systems were running. Maybe that would be with a bank, or if it was a manufacturing or a logistics organization, those applications that have been running for 20, 30 years, often out in distributed environments, in logistics centers or other remote locations, was being able to break into those areas because we very much had a reputation of we are the platform for builders. You do net new digital stuff on AWS, but the idea of running your ERP systems on AWS, running your mainframes on AWS, running your HR systems, your financial systems on AWS wasn't really a conversation that was being had in the very early days. And that's where it was really tricky for us to get a seat at that table.
Well, now it's amazing. You don't really realize, or at least I didn't, how much infrastructure is run on AWS. Like we use it internally at LevelUp Leads. I think it was just last week, I went to the bakery and they said, oh, not like the credit card isn't working right now. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Then I went to the grocery store. Like I couldn't use my phone to pay. They're like, it has to be a physical card. And then I was like, oh, that's weird. Back to back. Didn't think too much of it. But I went home and like AWS had an outage. You're like, wow, I can't believe how many companies are actually running their infrastructure. And in this case, it was payments off of AWS. And so it ended up being a big outage. But you just don't realize that even your local bakery is using something like that.
Even if it's not the whole business running on AWS, there's critical components. And if one of those nodes goes down, then it takes the whole thing down. Potentially, for example, that payments provider is one link in that whole value chain of that organization. It's the same outage that happened a couple of weeks ago or a week ago. We had friends that were, they're out in Madrid and they're traveling to the UK, wanted to buy tickets, but whatever was off from AWS was preventing them from being able to source their tickets in the UK. But interestingly, we were able to get on that same very site and be able to source them. But it's just impacting so many people in different ways, not just businesses, but very much from a consumer perspective as well as B2B.
So let's jump to the part of, you're working at Amazon, COVID hits. Tell us about that transition of how you moved away from Amazon, how you got the idea to start your own business. Tell us about that process.
This episode is sponsored by LevelUp Leads, a B2B sales development and appointment setting agency. Companies always need pipeline, but they oftentimes don't want to hire SDRs internally. The whole process is risky and expensive. You've got hiring costs, onboarding, training, additional spend on your tech stack, a few months to ramp up. And with that being said, SDRs are a high turnover position, and the person you hire might not necessarily work out, so you need to start all over again. That's why companies outsource this. LevelUp Leads allocates a team of people, their tech stack, so you can onboard and launch your campaigns in about a week. They set qualified meetings in your calendar so your team has more selling opportunities. Visit levelupleads.io today to learn more. All right, now back to the show.
So I'd always known, like many people, had a real desire to one day build and create my own business. I just, like many entrepreneurial individuals, never really seen or spotted that idea or had that invention that maybe I could take to market. And as I was developing as a senior account executive and then into a principal enterprise account executive, and as LinkedIn started to grow and become more of a tool that is present in our lives, I started to see and identify what I would describe as sales influencers and content creators and coaches and consultants that have incredible success, and then they've created their own sales training company, or they've become a solo enterprise sales coach. And I just wasn't aware of these people, and I was consuming their content and reading and learning from them. And at the time, I was developing and looking to transition into leadership, into sales leadership, more of a management role. Yeah, absolutely. There's formal programs where you go through that process to take on scope and manage other reps. But what I quickly realized was the thing that I was great at and the thing that I loved was coaching, mentoring, guiding other people. And I'd always done that even as an AE. I never won a strategic deal without a team. And I would never, ever have stood up on stage and said, hey, I won this deal. It was always a team effort. I know that's super cliche, but that's Who Not How, the book by Dan Sullivan, had a massive impact on me. When I read that in terms of how you can accelerate outcomes for you and others through maximizing the value of teamwork, that was the premise of everything I did. But go back to the story, as I was working through that transition, I realized management isn't just coaching, mentoring, working with the people. There's so much more that goes into it. And actually, I realized that I wouldn't be spending probably even as much time coaching and mentoring people as a manager as I would do as a senior leader within the AE community. But what this new area and these people that I discovered had identified to me is there's a market for what I have, the gift that I have, the things that I've done. There's absolutely a market out there, and there isn't anyone doing it in a way that I do it. And I believe, in terms of my values, my philosophy, but equally I've delivered results for me. So everything I talked to you about in terms of how I changed and how I operated from the point of becoming a father, I meet hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of AEs, men and women that are parents and have, a bigger purpose and a bigger why they go to work and why they do sales. And I realized that if other people are doing it in their own area and their own niche for their ideal strong fit clientele, then I can absolutely do it. So I said, if I'm going to do it, I've got to do it. I've got to go all in. This isn't something that I can side hustle. I know some people take that route, but for me, I'm laser focused. So do one thing very, very well. Terrible at multitasking. Just ask my wife about that. I can't do it. So if I was going to give this a go and really transition into this world, then I had to go all in. So people thought I was crazy when I said I'm leaving the role, I'm leaving the industry, I'm leaving Amazon. to start my own business as a solo advisor, consultant, coach. But I'm coming up to 3 years into this, and I can't imagine doing anything else with my time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congrats. So what was it like to actually break off and start your business? Like, how long into COVID was that? And then walk me through some of the unexpected things along the way. And then after that, I want to learn about how you got your first client.
Yeah, it's probably the most relevant to our connection and what you do, John. I left Amazon in 2023. So we were kind of out of the back of COVID. Everyone's returning to work. I think it's when all the large enterprises as well started to say return to office Monday. So I started my business. I think the steepest is still a steep learning curve. I think never stop reinventing yourself. I'll never stop learning. I'll never have this perfectly figured out because, COVID is one thing, and then boom, AI goes crazy and just changes everything for everyone. But the steepest learning curve for me, and the thing that probably surprised me most, is if you're selling for AWS, if you're selling even for a startup and a scale up, you're still selling a product, a brand, an organization. There's something, whether it's small or big, behind you, or more so alongside you, that you combine with your own skills. Once you say, right, it's Aaron Norris, and just Aaron Norris, you are going out and selling yourself. But I very much have a service mentality. I was never we are features, benefits. I never had that kind of like pushy sales style. But now I have to stand alone. I think that was probably the biggest wow/scary realization, that no longer can you rely on the credibility you get from the organization. This is just you. And when you haven't done it yet, that was one of the hardest things. So how I got started was doing some pro bono work, working with account executives and leaders across various different organizations, initially from my network. And I was able to, through that, refine what it is I'm great at, my delivery mechanisms, build some credibility and success stories and some metrics, that the evidence that it wasn't just me that believed that this stuff could work. It actually worked out in the field. And then I had to step into the realms of, okay, let's go and get some paid clients now.
That's smart. Build up that credibility, some social proof.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, similarly, I started my company during COVID. So I was working at a lead generation agency, and we went into COVID, and it was just a roller coaster. It went from, we had to let go of some people on the team, and like everybody at the company took a pay cut. And then everyone realized, because people kind of freaked out during COVID. They're like, oh, well, I'm letting my sales guys go. Then after a little while, they're like, but I still need sales. And so the easiest option was to outsource it. So then the business tripled during COVID. This is at my previous company. And so then I was like, and then I had the same thing as you. It's just like, I always had wanted to start a company. I felt like now was the time to do it. I'm just sitting at home. I'm spending more hours than ever at the computer. And so similarly, I did the same thing and spun off and started LevelUp Leads.
That is awesome. You've spotted an opportunity. And I love that phrase from, we met at Surf and Sales. I love that phrase and that idea from Scott Leese around reducing the delta between idea and action. And that sounds like you've just done exactly that. You've seen an uptick in the market. You've seen an opportunity. Why can't I do this myself? Why can't I build a company? And you're on that journey now, and you've already had a lot of success.
Yeah, it's been fun. There's certainly been ups and downs, but similarly started the business during COVID. It's a good time. So now tell us a little bit about, how many AEs are you able to work with at a given time? And then how are you going about getting new clients? Is it mainly through network? Or are you doing any type of outreach on your own?
Yeah, so I purposely work with a small number of people because I believe that I have to provide them not only with, a powerful coaching session, whether that be once or twice a week, but a lot happens in the world of enterprise sales, strategic sales, when they're either trying to win new logos or drive a deal through to closure. Just turning up, having a conversation, helping them, and then them disappearing doesn't really work. So I give my clients access to me asynchronously, offline, and support them between the sessions as well. So I kind of say, as a rule of thumb, about 10, 12 one-to-one customers, but that does flex because there's periods in the calendar where things are quieter, like in summer, but equally from a business perspective, I also work B2B. So I will run advisory engagements, consultancy projects with organizations where I'm consulting into the business. I may be training and coaching their teams, and they're often, chunky pieces of work, which means I can't have as many concurrent one-to-one clients at the same time. But it's less about a number for me. It's more about capacity. It's more about ensuring that I am building and structuring my life, and all those things that I've mentioned in the book in the context of enterprise sales. It's not just about grow and slam my diary full of coaching sessions. I want to work with great people that have big ambitions and that I truly believe that I can support them on that journey. And to answer the second part of your question, I've won and have clients that have come through my referral network and through inbound, people that have followed my content and it's resonated. But 90% of my business is self-sourced through my outbound, through my outreach, but not in a outreach and pitch kind of way. Again, I'm not a product, I'm not a service, I just do this very niche thing for this very niche problem. I am always building and investing in my network and sparking real conversations. And some people don't want to do that. It's predominantly entirely through LinkedIn, really. Some people don't want to engage in those conversations just through chat, but a lot of people in this modern world are happy to have a real business level conversation, and we can quickly determine whether there's mutual value and there's a fit there, and that will lead to a conversation on Zoom or Teams or whatever the preferred platform is. And some of those people will decide, and they will decide this makes sense for us to work together on this big problem to achieve this great outcome. And others, we support each other in other ways, whether that be, we partner, whether that we create our own referral network. But ultimately, all of my clients have come from me looking for the people that I think might be struggling with the problems that I can help with. Predominantly, this has been in the US, in the UK. There's been the odd client in the Middle East and in Asia. Australia, New Zealand is difficult. Time zone, real tough one to make work. I get up early, but that's exercise time and kids and family, get them to school, get them to nursery kind of time. So that one's a tough one to make work, but never say never.
So what would you say is some of the common themes that the people that you're coaching and helping out, what are they lacking, or what are they really seeking to improve when engaging with you?
In this, in 2025 for the enterprise seller, it's never been harder to, first of all, break through the noise because of all the greatness that AI brings. Now companies can mass market, mass outreach, like never before. And it's super high quality, right? In terms of the research you can do like that, in terms of the personalization you can do like that. But the problem that creates is once everybody's doing it en masse, once everybody's doing it to a level of quality, how do you then stand out? So I would say that's the first problem I'm helping enterprise account execs with who are new logo or even strategic account execs that are trying to break into other parts of the business. But then second of all, buyers have never been more enabled. They can get so much information from using ChatGPT and these kind of tools, but equally the information that's out there that informs the buyer makes it really difficult for that seller to get airtime and be that advisor, be that teacher, the whole kind of challenger sale piece around bringing value to the table for your customers. They know more than ever. They're really well informed. And then probably the final problem that builds on that is, it's never been tougher to get 6-figure, 7-figure deals signed off. So the business case, the return, the value, there's no more, we're just going to punt on this software and hope that it delivers an outcome. The CFO wants to know, we need to see it in numbers. We need to have real hard evidence that this is going to hit and move the needle on one of our metrics, which is really, really hard because a lot of sales orgs, companies, they train and know their product, but how do they know the impact of their product on that retailer or that government organization or that financial institution? How do we speak their language? How do we create the bridge between where they are today that desired future state, or even create the vision for that future state, and then help them understand that we are the pathway to get to where they want to be. So I find myself going really deep into outreach strategies with my clients, and then equally, how do we drive that narrative? How do we drive that conversation and move that through to conclusion at a technical level, at a business level, and importantly now at an exec level?
And I see on your LinkedIn profile that you're an advisor for multiple companies. Tell us about that. What are they advising you on, or how are you helping some of these companies? I assume they're startups.
So there's a mix in terms of organizations there that I've had those B2B advisory roles. Some of them have been amazing startups where they've won their first few clients. Maybe they already had a relationship with that initial client and they've grown with that small number of founding clients. And then through word of mouth, reputation, marketing, they've been able to organically grow, but they haven't had that new business angle. They haven't had that, let's be proactive and go and source our new business. So I've come in with them and worked with their new business development team on who is it that we can help? Why would they want to talk to us? How do we actually get engaged with them? How do we spark those conversations? How do we stand out from the crowd? So majority of those engagements have all been around, we've got to a level of growth, but now we want it to hockey stick. And we know we can no longer just rely on things to come inbound. We've got to go really proactive on the front foot.
I love that stuff. That's I get a lot of enjoyment out of that when we work with our clients. It's like they're strategizing, understanding, helping them define the ICP and where they're getting the most traction, in what industry and whatnot. So yeah, I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. Aaron, you and I met earlier this month, about 3 weeks ago, and you gave me this book right here, Sales Life. I haven't got a chance to read it yet, but tell us about it and how'd you come up with the idea and the desire to write your book?
The book was, as a result, maybe again of my passion for, if I'm going to build this business, I want to do it in an impactful way. I want to bring value to those people I can work with one-to-one, but maybe also there's people following a similar path to the path that I'd already been down that maybe aren't ready for the coaching, or maybe they're not in a position to be able to invest. And the book is a mechanism, one, to put my philosophy out there, but equally maybe to help people who are not ready for the coaching. So it makes it more accessible. And the book is filled with stories, but also frameworks and concepts that people can leverage. They can make their own. And there's a couple of exercises where they can actually download the tool. But ultimately, the premise of the book is you can win the big deals, you can get the promotions, you can be successful in this tough world that is B2B enterprise sales, but you can still, look after your health. You can still be competitive in sports, invest in your fitness, and you can still be super present and be home for dinner every evening and spend time with your kids and take them to their football matches. So it's very much, the book is structured into 3 parts. Ultimately, how do you maximize the value that you have, the value of you as an individual? What is it that you really want? How are you going to get there? What are your superpowers? Then there's the second element, which everyone's focused on, which is how do you maximize customer value and accelerate those customer engagements and ultimately create business partnerships. But then the final piece, if you visualize it as a Venn diagram, is how do you win internally? Because there's so many people that are great at their job and they're laser focused on the customers, as they should be, but they can't get the resources they need. They don't get the recognition that they deserve. They are not tapping into a huge amount of value that's available to them, but equally the value that they possess is super valuable to their organization and their leadership as well. And when you combine all those 3 things in terms of your value, creating value for customers and creating value for the organization, that's when your career soars. And that's how I've structured the book. And I've had some, really powerful and humbling feedback from people that told me, I'll read it, but, I've been in this game for 25 years and I'm not really sure what you could teach me. I've seen it all. And what they realize, it's not a sales tactic or framework book like many of the ones that you see out in the market. It's very much around how do you design and create that life and then achieve it through the vehicle that is corporate sales.
I love it. I look forward to reading it.
I look forward to your review.
I will write you a good review. Where can people find
review.
you? Where can people get the book? Tell the audience where they can find you.
Find me on LinkedIn. Drop me a connection request. Say hey. Say that you found me through John and the conversation we had on the podcast. And the book is available on Kindle and on Amazon. So on Amazon.com.co.uk, pretty much globally on Amazon. The roadmap is that we will create the audiobook as well. It's not currently on Audible, but I've just said it here publicly. So that's pretty much me nailing down that commitment to make it happen in 2026. So I know a lot of people are listeners as opposed to readers. So they'll have to be a little bit patient, but I encourage you to get the paperback version, use the frameworks, cover it in notes and annotation and highlight. And I love to see those pictures when people send me a battered version of that book through. So yeah, so reach out to me. Love to have the conversation. Even more interested in the feedback and reviews on Amazon, but not a guaranteed good review. It has to be honest. It has to be real. Yeah. I like the feedback. I like the feedback, and it can contribute maybe to the next book.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you coming on, and until next time.
Likewise. Thank you very much for inviting me. Love the conversation, and we'll definitely do it again sometime.